Good morning everyone, Egwin from Scope of Life, and welcome to my hamstring stretch tutorial for today. Hamstrings are the big muscles, or is the big muscle group that runs down the back of my upper leg area. The important part with the hamstrings, once again, it's a muscle that laps over two big joints. So the hamstrings do have an effect on my hip joint, and the hamstrings obviously have an effect on my knee. So on the knee joint, the hamstrings will bend my knee, so bending the lower leg towards the back of the thigh. That's what the hamstrings are for. That's one function of them. Second function of the hamstrings is to actually stretch out the upper leg in the hip joint. So in the hip joint, the hamstrings work in a pulling back motion for the upper leg area, and in the knee joint, they bend the knee. There is a couple of different things that need to be mentioning in terms of this muscle. The muscle, the hamstrings themselves, once again, it's not one singular muscle. It's a couple of muscles with different heads, different origins. That makes for a lot of variety options when we are in the stretch in terms of how to rotate the hip area and stuff like that. But let's get right into it. Today, just to show you what I mean by it, I mentioned it in the iliopsoas stretch. We just use this small towel here, place it in the area of the mat where we want to have the rear knee, just to take a little bit more of pressure off the knee, or rather just to support the knee a little bit, because we'll put a lot of pressure in the knee and in the rear knee. And so whenever the surroundings, the ground is a little bit hard, it's better to protect the knee by putting a little bit more cushion between your knee and the ground. The position is similar to what we already used in the iliopsoas stretch, although the position in terms of where the body weight goes is exactly reversed. So once again, we'll take a position where one foot is in the back and one foot is in the front, like so. Once again, we want to protect the spine. So from this position, once again, we come onto the front foot. In this stretch, protecting the spine is not that much of an issue because we don't have the iliopsoas pulling on the spine, but it's just more comfortable to rest your upper body on your front leg. Now, to start with, make sure that your rear leg is at an angle of 90 degrees towards your mat. So this time we don't want this forward lunged position like for the iliopsoas stretch. This time we want this more centered position exactly above my right foot in this case. The left foot goes out in front. Depending on how good your hamstrings are stretched, it can go further to the front right from the beginning, or rather backwards. So I'm going to show a complete beginner's version in case you have very tight hamstrings. So I'm gonna start with a very short position and walk deeper into position as we progress. I guess that's in all and everyone's interest. There is a couple of things we can do with our hips. In this position, it is possible to sort of turn the hip so that my left hip is actually a little bit further towards the front knee, or we can square the hips off so that my hips are in a 90-degree angle. The plane of my hips is in a 90-degree angle towards the position of my feet. We're gonna play with both. Just for starting right now, take one position, doesn't really matter which one of those. Bring your arms down. Once again, the arms are here to stabilize yourself, although in this position they have a little bit more work. Now start with the left foot out front in a comfortable position where you don't feel too tight in the hamstrings already. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna sink our pelvis backwards. Now, depending on how good your stretch, how your flexibility in your left hamstring is, you might find that the position of your feet is too narrow. If that's the case, then you just shift your left leg a little bit further to the front to start with, and then you start sinking back into the stretch. The whole way, the upper body is resting on my front leg. There is no lifting the upper body up like so. The upper body rests on my front leg, and now the arms come to play. The position of the arms is actually further backwards this time, because what we want is, we want to dial whether or not we have more pressure or less pressure in the hamstrings, using not only the muscles of the rear leg, but also our arms. So instead of making some flying position, where we are a little bit wobbly as well, instead of that, we come back and we support the work our rear leg has to be doing in this position with our arms. So our arms are actually part of supporting the weight. In this position, so what you want is, you want the rear foot maybe to go back like 10 or 15 degrees out of the 90-degree angle. So when we started here, you want the rear foot maybe 10 or 15 degrees facing backwards. If it's facing back in a much smaller angle here, then once again you want to shift the left foot to the front. So starting, we come into the position. At the beginning, just find the right distance between the left heel and the right knee. From this position, gently start to move your body backwards and sink into the stretch. Now make sure that your left knee doesn't fan out to the side, where my left foot actually comes to the small edged side, pinky toe edged side of the foot. So make sure to stabilize the left leg using your left arm, which is rather close to your left thigh. The right arm goes to the back here as well. Your upper body rests on the front leg. Now by now you should feel a nice stretch in the rear of your left foot. If you're very flexible and you can do like a split and stuff like that, this stretch might not work for you in this position just now. Now I told you before that there is a couple of different heads, muscle heads in the hamstrings. So when you come out of the movement by using your arms to push you to the front, now start playing with the hip. What you can do is square off your hips completely to the front. Once again, go into the position. And from now, sink back again. Now you'll find that you use a completely different part of the muscle in your stretch. Once again, when I go out and I leave the squared off hips, I parallel them to the long side of the mat, and I come into the position and sink backwards. Now I'm working the outside part of my hamstrings. By squaring off the hips, I'm working the inside part of my hamstrings. Try not to make too much rocking forward and backwards motion. That's because I'm explaining right now. On the other side, I'll do a more compact version how you should actually do it. I'm explaining on this side. Now, especially in this position, whenever you relax, you take a couple of breaths, you relax and sink deeper in the position. At some point, you might find your rear leg once again in a position where it has really a lot of work and where your arms just not enough to support your weight. In this case, just come a little bit to the front once again, pushing with both, with your leg and with your left arm. Come a little bit to the front and shift your left foot a little bit further to the front, and then sink back into the movement so that your right foot, your right leg is in a comfortable position once again. To come out of this stretch, shift your weight a little bit to the side, bring your left arm to the side as well, and then completely sink backwards into your right foot. Take your arm to your left foot and rotate it back. That's one version. There's a couple of versions to get back out of this stretch comfortably. Now, between the stretches, come into a small, what in yoga is called child's pose position. So your feet are next to each other. You place your upper body just over them. This helps to relax the muscle that have just done a lot of work, which is actually both muscles. It's the thigh muscles on the right side, the quadriceps on the right side, and it's the hamstrings on the left side, whereas the hamstrings are the ones we just stretched. Just relax in this position a little bit. You can either place the arms to the front or to the rear. Doesn't really matter. What we want here is the position of the legs with the upper body resting on it so that they can relax a little bit. Then come out, change sides, left knee onto the soft cushion part of the mat, right foot to the front. Once again, at the beginning, choose whether you want your hips squared or to the long side. Do one version, then come out just a little bit, then switch to the other version. So don't try to switch between the versions, between the hip positions, when you are in the full stretching position. And that's not what we want. That puts a lot of strain on the endings of the muscles, on the muscle heads. That's not what we want here. So from this position, upper body is resting comfortably on your right thigh. And from this position, once again, just relax a little bit. Make sure your upper body is relaxed into the position already. Make once again sure that your rear leg is in a 90-degree angle to start with. And from this position, let yourself drop back. Use the arms to stop you from falling back completely. So to support the left leg. The arms are there to try and take off as much pressure as possible from my rear leg. Whenever you reach a point where the angle in the rear leg gets uncomfortable, walk yourself a little bit back to the front, shift your front foot a little bit further to the front, and then sink back into the position. Take a couple of deep breaths. You can sigh, you can moan, you can make noises while you're stretching. That really helps with releasing the muscle, helps with the expression of the tension. Don't try to constantly relax. Go into a position, take a couple of deep breaths, then relax when you feel like, okay, I think I could go a little further. Now if you want to switch the thing with the pelvis, just walk yourself a little bit further to the front. In my case now, square off the hips in a position where the hips are 90 degrees facing towards the length of the mat. Once again, I bring my upper body down and then sink back into it, now reaching the inside part of my hamstrings on the right side. Once again, take a couple of deep breaths. Remember that we are doing a health stretch, so it's about relaxing the whole body as much as possible, finding the sweet spot that you need with your arms to balance yourself, and with your foot, with your rear leg. And slowly take off a little bit of pressure. Walk to the side, sit back, bring your right foot into you, and once again bend forward to come into this small, relaxing child's pose. All right. So that's the basic version of the hamstring stretch. Once again, we try to single out the muscle we want to stretch as much as possible. That's possible in this position. It's really working quite nicely. And with twisting the hip, you have the option to switch between the outside and the inside part of your hamstrings, so you can work them separately, which is a really good idea because there's different tensional parts, different functions they both have, and so it's good to work on both of them separately instead of seeing the muscle as one big whole. More info about how to work with your consciousness, especially also with your arms in this position. It's great to work with your fingers on the muscle. I'm going to show you that in the next level tutorial. Other than that, make sure to subscribe. If you have questions, leave them in the comment box, write me an email, whatever. I make sure to reply, either in text or with a video reply. And then see you around next time for the next stretch I'm going to run you through. We have a couple of more to go until we're finished with the beginner's tutorial. See you around. Have a wonderful day.